Other comments? Okay, we have our first social media question, and after this I'll ask again for questions or comments from the audience. So you have your microphones in front of you, just hold the microphone close to you and identify yourself, affiliation, and country. Our first social media question to our panelists from Lucas out there in somewhere in the internet. Question, looking at food producing countries embarking on shifting to non-food production for export, how would that affect food security in the mid to long term, and what should be done?
Okay, let me take that question, Dalton. This is a very typical Thailand, which is trying to shift from more of the agriculture to more like industrial and export-oriented country. If you look at the history of Thai rice industries, back in the old days, just after the World War II, Thailand imposing quite a lot of taxes for the export of rice, just to try to maintain the stability of the food in the country. Only when in the early 70s, I believe, where they start to follow the GATT, then where the government start to allow the private exporter to be involved. And also at that period of time, they still try to maintain the supply of the rice in the country by imposing quite a heavy tax and levy for exports. Only when it started to be more liberal on the 1980, when the rice production is actually in excess, much in excess in Thailand, then the government scrapped all this export tax and even at some stage encouraged the exporter by providing certain type of subsidies to be more competitive. The current Thai government's policy increasing the cost of the basic price procurement for paddy to quite a high level is to encourage the younger youth to come back to do the cultivation of agriculture, where in the past few decades, the youth, a lot of youths in Thailand, they start to think like doing agriculture work is kind of like dirty. So with the mushrooming of all the industry, the factories, they say, oh, I don't have to work under the sun. It'd be much nicer to work in the factory. So they start to ignoring the agriculture sector. But with the stimulus that the current Thai government introducing, it start to bring back the youth back to the agriculture sector, which is quite a good
yeah, very important to get back to agriculture. Ms. Valentine Rugobiza, you have a comment on this issue of shifting to non-food exports?
Yes, I would like to open another perspective on this. Good morning to all of you. It's simply listening with a lot of interest to all the presentations made. It's pretty clear that for a country like Indonesia, there's still a lot of potential, unexploited potential in terms of food production. So that could be one part of the solution. But another part of the solution has to do with cooperation. Cooperation between the food producing the food producing countries and the countries that are food importers. One need the food production and supply and demand are shifting at such a point today that it will be very difficult for one single country or one set of countries to ensure its food security without having access to information, how things are moving, how markets are evolving all over the world. And I think there are a number of structures that could provide that kind of information. So it doesn't, the specific question on shifting to non-food production, I know it is an issue an issue that has a bearing on the price of food It is starting having a bearing on on the price of food, notably production of biofuels and so on and forth. And looking at all that, without being a commodity expert, through a framework of cooperation, collaboration, exchange of information, then countries are able to communicate and to make sure that signals between the demand and the supply are maintained carefully so that you can adjust when needed.
Okay, we're going to hear from Ms. Valentine very shortly on other thoughts from her from her role as Deputy Director General of the WTO, but we're going to take some audience questions or comments now. Please raise your hand so we see you are up here front, sir. Identify yourself.
See, I'm Sriram Chadakundan from India. If the needs of the society or public at large of the global village should dictate the flow of commodity supply chain, efficiency and stability or sustainability, whatever you may say. But today, on account of food speculation and conversion of this commodity stocks into financial assets, availability of the money or currency in a particular country is deciding or distorting the path of the food supply chain. And that means the food is going to the countries where they could mint currency or increase the quantitative, legal tender in the concerned country, but not where they require food. And it's the greatest concern, pushing poverty levels at high. This is even nearly 100,000 economists have also expressed it is a concern. That means this food speculation is made available to even the small retail investors, not limited to institutional level speculators, gone to the small retail public at large. Thank you.
Okay, so no question, that was a comment, yes, sir? Okay, thank you very much. Comments, panel? We have our next, no comments? Okay, we have our next social media question, and we have several more audience before we get to Ms. Valentine. The next question, panelists. And this is a question from Amit in India. Are we being live streamed? Are they watching us now, or they sent this before? How commodity and nutritional requirements for BPL category of populations in India can be undertaken by developing or least developing countries and not by developed countries? How can nutritional and commodity requirements for BPL category of population in India be undertaken by developing and least developed countries? Mr. Gibson.
I'll have a go at that for a start. I think it's true to say that the developed countries already are putting some research into the development of crops for the underdeveloped countries. And in India itself, in southern India, there is a research station. The acronym is ICRISAT. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but I know that the Australian government, for example, puts about $500,000 a year into that, researching for new varieties of pulse crops that are suitable for the conditions that exist in that part of India. Sadly, in Syria at Aleppo, there is another research station, and I can't say what condition that's in at the moment, but it also has received funding from not only from Australia but from most developing countries are putting some of their foreign aid into those sorts of research stations. And there's a sharing of information that goes on. As I said right at the beginning, I can really only talk about pulses to any extent, but we see it within my organisation as part of our role to make sure that research outcomes are shared and that there is development within the developing countries of new sources of food. I mean, it's hugely important, and it's part of our role.